Hi, my name is Joshua Furman. I'm the curator of the Houston Jewish History Archive at Rice University. Today is December 1st, 2020, and I'm here with Rabbi Sarah Fort, Assistant Rabbi, Congregation Beth Yeshurun. Rabbi Fort, how are you today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. And let's start just by telling us a little bit about your childhood and your family. Where'd you grow up?
I was, not straightforward so much. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, but we moved in a very Jewish area, like very intensely Jewish. But we moved when I was like 4 to a little nothing town in Maryland that until recently no one really had ever heard of. And there were no Jews there. And that's where I spent my childhood, which is a really interesting way to live.
What town is that?
It's Odenton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's usually the response I get. They go, because I say, where are you from? I say Maryland, and they go, oh, like Bethesda or Silver Spring, or like these very Jewy areas.
Right.
Like that is not where I am from. I'm from it's like kind of off the Chesapeake Bay,
Mm-hmm.
and is not known for its Jewish community because there isn't really one there.
Save the Chesapeake.
I mean, I'm a fan.
Right.
Big fan of the Chesapeake Bay. I have a lot of pride in like Maryland crab cakes, and I've never had them before, but I'm very proud of them for my compatriots.
You swear by them for those who will eat them.
I assume if you eat it, I still them they're the best. That's what I've been told. So I will stand by that. So
then tell us about, growing up in Odenton, Maryland, in an area where there's not a lot of Jews. How did that affect your Jewish identity?
I think it made it really strong because my dad's from Chicago, my mom's from New York, and they met in Israel. So, fairly Jewy. And then through trials and tribulations, ended up in Odenton, Maryland. And that's where me and my brother were raised. And you have to try really hard to have a Jewish home in the middle of nowhere where there are no Jews. That's a lot of effort. And we weren't, the most observant. We're the most observant people I knew. But like Shabbat was in our home, and like kashrut was in our home, and so like I was the only kid who growing up I knew who didn't eat shellfish, who didn't eat pork, and that those kinds of things, who celebrated Hanukkah, not Christmas, and Passover, not Easter. And I think that just because of all the effort my parents had to put into raising us Jewish, going to the nearest conservative shul was 45 minutes in the next county over, and that's the one we went to for Hebrew school twice a week, and then every single Shabbat of my life. And I think I loved being Jewish. It was such a strong part of my identity because you have to try so hard for us to feel Jewish and be Jewish and do Jewish when there really aren't any other Jews around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then we moved to Virginia when I was 12, and there were a lot more Jews there, ironically.
A lot more Jews in Virginia.
Compared to the middle of nowhere, Maryland, yeah, there's a lot of Jews in Northern Virginia.
Sure. And then when did the idea of becoming a rabbi first take root for you?
Oh man, I'm such a jerk, to be very honest, because when it's the number one question people like to ask, and when I was early on in rabbinical school, people would ask me, and I'd say, well, one night I was sleeping outside using a rock as a pillow, and I had a dream that there was a ladder and angels were going up and down. But the thing is, when you say that, people take it seriously, and then I felt like a jerk because I was I'm just kidding, and not true. So I stopped saying.
I cribbed that story from somewhere else.
I heard it. It should sound familiar. No, when I was really little, my dad, purely to needle me, he does not actually think this at all, but just to needle me, he would say, Sarah, women can't be rabbis. And I would be like, yeah, I can too. I could be a rabbi if I want. And he doesn't believe that at all. He's my number one fan, but he just said to just get that reaction out of me. But I never actually really wanted to be a rabbi. I loved being Jewish, and I always felt really close with God. I've always felt close with God since I was a kid. But it didn't occur to me to be a rabbi till I was probably halfway through college. And I was really involved. Our Hillel wasn't very active, I would say. We didn't have a big Jewish community, shocker, in Northern Virginia. And at the school I went to, George Mason University. Go Patriots.
Go Patriots.
Yeah, go Patriots. You would be very pro-Patriots. Go Patriots. And I just kind of did a non-hostile takeover of the Hillel. I was like, we're going to have services. We're going to have programming. We're going to do all these things. And I just loved, I had no budget, and I just that's what I spent all my time doing was Hillel. And I started teaching Hebrew school, and I started being a youth group advisor for Kadima and kind of like pre-Kadima. So I was really seeing Jewish experiential education in action. And I just realized that's what I love.
Kadima is part of the United Synagogue Youth.
Yeah, it's USY. It's like the middle school. It's like a middle school youth group for the kind of USY chain. The theory being you start in Kadima and then you grow up. And we also had like a kind of older elementary pre-Kadima group, just to kind of keep them in the pipeline. So eventually they go to USY.
Right. Sure.
And that's what I love doing. I was like, I like curating people's Jewish journeys for them and with them. I was like, this is what I want to do professionally. And I do not want a degree in government and international politics with a minor in Islamic studies, as much as I love studying it. So I finished and I got my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to rabbinic school.
And so what I always like to ask rabbis what plan B was. So if you hadn't become a rabbi, what would you have done?
I'm so curious what everyone else's answers are. I never had I don't have a plan B. I never had a plan B. Sorry if you can hear my child slamming toys over there.
That's okay. This is an authentic interview. It'll be a miracle.
It really is.
If we don't hear my child banging on the door in 10 minutes, it'll
But I love like all your children, so this is fine.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. No, I don't have a plan B. I remember hearing in rabbinical school once from an interfaith thing from a guy who was studying to be a priest, and he said that he had been told this, and I've kind of just held on to it ever since. He said that he'd been told, if you can do anything else than this, you should do that other thing. Do that. And if this is it, like if this is what you have to do, then you got to do it. And I think it's true. I tell that to people who are interested in going to rabbinical school or interested in going to seminary. That's what I say. Like if this is what you have to do.
Yeah, that's the same line I tell anyone who wants to become a academic. If you can do literally anything else, right? If you're good at math, it's the same line. So what do you love most about being a rabbi, and what do you find the most challenging about your job?
Well, I got into pulpit, into being a rabbi in general, and pulpit specifically, because I love helping facilitating and curating people's Jewish journeys wherever they need to go. God, Torah, Talmud, Israel, community, whatever it is that they're meeting on their journey, I want to be able to do that for them and with them. And I get to do that for all ages in the pulpit, and that's what I love. It's exactly what I wanted to get out of this, and it is what I get out of it. And so that's a privilege. Every life cycle is a privilege. Every class you get to teach, sometimes the meetings are a little, not as much fun, but even meetings can be fun because I get to plan awesome programs which help facilitate people's Jewish journeys. So really it's all kind of related. That's the best part of this. Mm-hmm. You get to be there in people's lives at the beginning and at the end. And it's an enormous privilege to just be granted that kind of access to people's very private parts of their lives and to shepherd them through whatever stage they're going through, beginning, middle, end.
Right. All the stages.
And we get to be there. That's amazing.
For me, I actually considered very briefly a rabbinical career. And I decided
the other thing you could do, which was academic.
I decided I could do something else, which is why I'm here and why you're here. But I was a Jewish communal professional after college for a couple of years, and I loved it. I worked in Boston at a synagogue not far from Brandeis University, and it was a great job. It was a great out of college job. But I think the challenge that any Jewish communal professional, and especially a rabbi, faces is that you're always on, right? You're always working. Shabbat, you're working. Holidays, you're working. And your partner is also a rabbi. So how do you find that balance between sort of maintaining and finding space for your own sort of spirituality and your own your own religious needs while also serving, in the role of a pulpit rabbi for a large congregation? How do you do that?
With great difficulty. It's kind of always evolving, because I'm sure this is true for everyone. I don't think that we're special in this, but we're in the, the new baby phase of life, and he's a toddler now, but that on his own throws everything off kilter, and then this job itself is also really interesting. So kind of constantly recalibrating and remembering what's important and what's missing. You're like, have we sat down and done a Shabbat dinner together? And how long has it been? Oh, we should probably do that. And not trying to fit square pegs into round holes. Like, oh, like if I'm up here, I'm leading davening, we're praying. I really do try to actually pray when I'm out there. I'd say 90% of the time I am actually saying those prayers for myself. And I don't know every other clergy. I can't speak for them. I can speak for me. But sometimes 10% of the time, your brain is just somewhere else. Like, try to coordinate. There's a bar bat mitzvah, or there's a name. There's something's going to happen, and like in my mind, whenever you're up there as clergy, as you kind of talked about this and touched on, is that you're even if you really are praying, you really are saying those words and you're meaning them for yourself. Your brain is also doing other things. Thinking like, oh, what does the cantor need? Oh, what about the family? Oh, what about like we need to end? Oh, we're running over, or which is perpetually an issue, So you're just like, I'm saying the words, but also my brain is going boop, 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 boop. So sometimes just, I think, giving yourself, to borrow from our Christian friends, the grace to be like, you know what? Maybe I'm not meaning all these words that I'm saying. I'm meaning them, in the sense of like, I'm saying them in my mind on behalf of everybody, but I'm not meaning them for myself, and not because I'm trying to curate an experience up here of Shabbat for other people or whatever.
Right. You're sort of like the program director and
the MC.
The MC of it all, and it's hard to balance, but you make it work. And I'm sure it like anything else, it gets easier the more you do it, probably. So you've been the assistant rabbi at Beth Yeshurun since 2017, and Beth Yeshurun, for those of you watching this who don't know, is the largest conservative congregation in the United States, possibly in all of North America. Tell us a little bit about your community and what makes Beth Yeshurun so special.
It is big, like you said. It is. We have the largest conservative shul definitely in America. I think there's at least one other shul in Canada I know of that is, I think, at least the same size, I believe. But yeah, definitely America. We are the largest conservative shul. I knew I wanted a big shul when I was in school. I was looking for a big shul to work in, so I really just went straight to the top. I want the biggest. I wanted big. I didn't know I wanted this big, but it worked. It's also unusual, and I think this is something that makes it special, in that Beth Yeshurun in some incarnation has existed for over 100 years. In some form or fashion has existed for over 100 years. That's really old, and in 75 years in this current incarnation, which is very old. Like, I know people my age who are, first of all, I know people in this, maybe just a Houston, not just, but it's a Houston thing, that were people who are, fifth generation American Jews. Like, that's not my family. That's sure as heck not my husband's family, So to meet people who are 5 generations American, like, wow, that's crazy. And then on top of that, there are people who are 5th generation Beth Yeshurun members. Like, yeah. The roots here go so deep, and it's so, that is a tie and a kinship to your community and to your shul that I've just not seen anywhere else, really, in America. It's so amazing, and that creates a really, really special kind of community, and it is, like you said, very big. And it kind of reminds me of people say about LA, it's a really, really big city, so you have to like find your village that you live in. And it kind of reminds me of that, and that Beth Yeshurun is kind of like a big city, like a big city. And, there are lots of villages within it, and they're all a little bit different, and people find like their niche. They find their village within the greater Beth Yeshurun umbrella. And as a rabbi, my privilege is I get to travel to every single village. pretty cool.
So there's the Museum Minion lay-led group that we sometimes are part of.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Chapel Minion in the JB Greenfield Chapel, and sort of other groups. And yeah, I think it really is a diverse um, environment that Beth Yeshurun creates. Talk a little bit about your role at Beth Yeshurun, specifically as female clergy, as a role model to women and girls um, at Beth Yeshurun, and just in conservative Judaism more broadly.
Well, I am, yes, I'm the only woman rabbi there, and that's I like it. Everyone else I've run into likes it, or they say, I wasn't sure at first, but now I'm on board, and that actually makes me really feel good to hear. And knowing that kids grow up and they see a woman, like I didn't grow up seeing women rabbis. No, and women have been ordained in our movement since just before I was born. So theoretically I could have, but most women don't go into pulpit. And if they go into pulpit, they don't stay in pulpit. So it's not such a common thing to see even now more than ever before. So knowing that kids grow up seeing men as rabbis and women as rabbis, and it doesn't even occur to them that it would be wrong or unusual. That's really cool. And then anytime I get an email from a parent or a teacher or saying, oh, my daughter wants to wear a kippah, where did you get yours? And now our gift shop carries them. I'm extremely proud about that. And like more girls are getting talit when they're bar mitzvah. And I'm like, yes. Not saying don't do it if you don't want to do it, but like, yay. I'm all for that. I'm seeing a woman wearing tefillin. I mean, that's earth-shattering for some people.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk now about natural disasters.
I love natural disasters and talking about natural disasters.
Yeah, we've seen our share of them, have we not?
Yeah, you and I have seen our share of them from the same vantage point.
Yeah, quite literally, actually. So you folks moved here in, I think, early summer of 2017?
Yeah, I think in June. I think my contract starts in July, so June probably moved here.
June of 2017, right? And we were living in the same apartment building at the time, and it was just a couple months later that in August of 2017 that Hurricane Harvey showed up. And I'm just curious, to hear your perspective as a newly transplanted Houstonian at the time and a new clergy member, thrust into just an unimaginably awful situation. What do you remember about that time, about what was happening at Beth Yeshurun, about the needs of your community? And I mean, what a difficult way to kind of hit the ground running in your first job out of rabbinical school. What do you remember about Harvey?
I remember losing power and water. I remember that losing water was worse. So I remember that as a good lesson to learn from that. I remember thinking it was so odd. People kept apologizing to me because of, what you were saying, that, oh, and you're just starting, and I'm so sorry you have to start your first job out of rabbinical school like this. And I would say, well, okay, you literally lost your house and both cars. So I feel like if someone's going to say sorry, it should be me to you, Yeah. But people felt bad for me. And I remember thinking like, wow, first of all, how nice of a person you have to be to say, like, I'm sorry for you. And I'm like, I'm fine. And that's the kind of people who live here. It's just legitimately, genuinely nice people, which is amazing. And I don't know any different. I didn't know any different. It's not like I have, 20 years in the rabbinate under my belt and suddenly, oh my gosh, my life's upside down. Like, I don't know. We hadn't really even finished unpacking. So I don't know, but you had to deal with it. You had to, and from my perspective, from both our perspectives was, we didn't have water and we didn't have power, but we also didn't flood. So we have to go out every day and help put the synagogue back together and help the community and our families. And that's what other people have the same perspective,
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I didn't flood, so I have to go out there and I have to do everything I can for everyone else. Or, oh, I only lost a car. So maybe, oh, I lost my cars, but I need, like, how do I help my friends remediate their home? How do I help my neighbors? How do I, and because it was just devastating. A quarter of our families flooded. A quarter of our families. That's massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. And
yeah. And the building too. I mean, Beth Yeshurun,
and our building.
The building flooded.
Yes, it did. We got, throughout 8 to 10 inches at least to about 4 feet in Barg, because it's a bit of an incline, like theater
Barg
style.
Sanctuary, right?
The Barg Sanctuary, because it's very large and there's an incline down. So, you don't expect to be going into the office wearing work boots and jeans and gloves, but like work gloves. But then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. And we're really in the best position to be helping, both my husband and I, because we didn't flood. So we're like, well, what do we need to do? And so it was just a massive coordinating effort for how do we help our families, how do we help our congregants. And I didn't really know anyone at that point. I knew so few people, but it's like, okay, how do I help these people? How do I get people what they need? How do I hook them up with other resources that can help them more than like I can? How do we put this synagogue back together? And I remember, we need to get boxes, because you just have thousands of humashim and sidurim, and they all need to be, buried, and it's the carpet all has to come up, and the walls all need to be punched out. You have to cut them out twice as high as they flood, so 2 foot of wall everywhere. The entire shul has to be cut out, and then it was a massive effort. And that's just the physical recovery. The emotional, mental recovery, it goes a lot longer. I think it was like a year later. I think we were back in the building when we had religious school dismissal on a Sunday, and usually the kids sit outside and like their parents come up and they just get dismissed from there. But it was raining, so instead of dismissing from outside, we kept them in the cafeteria of the day school, where the religious school also meets. And so the kids are just kind of sitting in groups, but also kind of running amok, as kids do. And it started raining a lot, and then it was raining like torrential, like sideways rain. It was crazy. Like all the adults, I actually happened to just be there because I was doing a program, and we were all just kind of looking out the windows, because Richie's, the cafeteria, it's really one whole wall is just window, so you can see everything, and it's just sideways, unbelievable. And you see, as soon as that big clap, you see with some of the kids, they immediately just become agitated, and some of them start crying. And there was this one parent who came to pick up her daughter, who was talking to another little girl, and this other little girl was just in tears, like could not stop crying. And the mom was she was trying to help. She was saying, don't worry, the rain, it'll stop. The rain's gonna stop soon. Don't worry, don't worry. The rain will stop. And this little girl's just crying, saying, it's not gonna stop. It's never gonna stop. It's never gonna stop. And that's trauma.
Yeah.
And that is trauma. And how do you not have trauma from that? I have kids who had to swim out of their homes, and so, a lot of the helping that I did and the other clergy did and so many other people did is in helping people heal, and people healed or are still healing. It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah. What else can you do? Like, resilience, I don't think is pretending like you're fine when you're not. I think resilience is, it's healing from the hurt that you had so you can go on. And that's what I saw people here being resilient, physically recovering, and then working on like healing from a really big trauma.
Yeah. And I'm sure, leaning on you and your colleagues for some pretty intense pastoral support, I'm sure, in a lot of cases. I know, for me, I have a lot of awful memories of that time, but that's really the moment that the archive was born, in a sense. And I, in terms of thinking about a silver lining, I remember sitting with you in Stein Hall, and wet papers and photographs
that smell
everywhere, and it smelled terrible. Just like your nose
Yeah, it like gets into your nose, the
My
smell.
eyes
Like
are stinging right now, even like thinking about it.
just thinking about all that mold, just like
But
mildew.
the like energy that you poured into the task of going through all of those Beth Yeshurun records and photographs at a community that you'd only been part of, for a couple of months, but you really dedicated yourself to that task and helped us and a whole big crew of community volunteers and students get that stuff organized. And we managed to rescue a lot of it, thanks in no small part to you. And it's not like you had nothing else to do, uh, you know, those
I like to be
days.
busy.
So we really appreciate it. So
It was exhausting for sure.
so we survived Harvey. We survived it individually. We survived it communally. And nobody nobody could have imagined um, Purim night, March 2020, what was about to happen. I think we were at Beth Yeshurun then. I think we saw you there.
Yeah, that was
And
like the last kind of quasi-normal event we had.
that was it. So tell us now about what you remember thinking back about March. When did it start to become clear to you and the other clergy that things might not be able to carry on as usual?
Um, we've been there, we all watch the news, and we watched the news then. And even I had been part of some conversations. I remember talking to some of the clergy and board of saying, like, we should start talking about what happens if this all has to shut down, because no one knew anything that was going on at that point. And so we started sort of talking about it. And even at Purim, nobody was really, I think, changing numbers or anything or wearing masks. Like, no one wearing masks. We weren't like that kind of mask. But we did not let people serve themselves. We usually did the big Hamantash and Sunday bar, and it was not serve yourself. And we had the kitchen staff serve, which is like, because no one knew really what to do, and we weren't really being told what to do. And that was really the last kind of, we didn't even have like a regular Shabbat after that. After that, we started changing sizes of people being allowed in, like how many people do we allow, and do we restrict it based on age? We didn't know. How would we even do that? How would we ask people, like, well, if you have a pre-existing condition, what do we know? What kinds of things? Like, such a lack of information at that time. But we did start talking about it pretty early on. It was a process of clergy and the board, the executive committee, especially. They were meeting weekly. They might still be meeting weekly, actually. I don't know.
Right.
Doctors, obviously we're at the synagogue, so we have no shortage of doctors. All sorts of doctors, pediatricians, infectious disease, you name it, we have it. So thank God we have access to a lot of doctors. And also the city, Mayor Turner and Judge Hidalgo have weekly calls. And especially in those early days, it was the only real source of reliable information at a governmental level that we were getting, in terms of, rules for us, because we didn't know, are we not allowed to have certain numbers? How do we do this? What are other clergy doing? So they had these meetings for Houston clergy. So we were on, it's everything, every kind of clergy you can imagine. We were all on these calls, and they would have the folks from Houston Medical Center talk to us about the trends they were seeing, and what kinds of rules were going to be put in place and restrictions that would affect us and the decisions we would make in terms of what we had to do to keep our folks safe. And also kind of getting ideas from other people, like, how are you doing this? What size church do you have? Oh, this is a really big one. This is a really small one. Because, things depend on how much space you have and how much physical space you have, not just how many people you have.
Right. And Beth Yeshurun has a lot of both people and space.
We do have a lot of people. We do have a lot of, we have very, that made it easier, I would say, because we have these very physically large rooms. And even when you pare it down, 10 people or 20, or not anymore, but 40 people in the room that seats 600. It's cavernous. We have never had anyone transmit coronavirus. Sure.
Right. But I want to kind of start with the earliest phase. So there was probably a decision, if I'm remembering right, to just close Beth Yeshurun entirely. I think probably at some point in mid-March, no?
There were a couple of weeks where it might have been maybe even only 2 or so weeks where we didn't close, but we asked people, only B'nai Mitzvah family, because we have B'nai Mitzvah, we have usually at least 2 every week.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids are studying, so what are you going to do? I'm like, oh, just pause. You can't do it next week. So that's been a whole balance.
Because they're not only just studying, but they're learning a particular weekly.
They're learning that parsha, and so, you can't just do it in a week or in a month because it's all the wrong stuff. So we were restricting it, asking people like, oh, don't come if you think you should. I can hear my kid yelling.
He's setting you straight.
He was alive. He was alive for all that, so he remembers. So we did that for a while, and then eventually, really the county / city, it was like, no, we're shut it down. So
right.
And I think we actually shut down before it was imposed on us, I think.
Yeah. So the first major holiday to come along after that point was Passover. So what was Passover like for you this year? Both sort of just personally in terms of your preparations, shopping, and then as a clergy member, right? I mean, does Beth Yeshurun usually host a second Seder?
I was supposed to do the second Seder this year. I've never had a normal Seder as a rabbi, a normal Passover Seder. First year was Harvey, which was kind of cool. We were in Cuban Levitt and had no furniture in it, so that was kind of fun. Mm-hmm. But that was not normal. And then the year after that, I had a baby, like 3 days before Passover, so that was. And then, this year. So, not saying it's my fault, but it might be. Fun. It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. So yeah, that was. We usually do a second Seder. I was supposed to lead it, and we did Zoom Seders. So I had like 100, 150 parents and kids in my apartment, my little 2-bedroom apartment for Passover.
You packed them in.
I did, and then 45 minutes later, we had young professionals.
Back to back?
Yeah, well, because it's all on Zoom.
Right.
So I never, I wouldn't have that kind of access to people. People would not have that kind of access to like me in my home. But we did it on Zoom. So.
Right.
Kind of cool.
So obviously there are drawbacks to that. I mean, you can't really gauge people's reactions. People could have, their video cameras turned off. They could be looking at Facebook while you're talking or leading some of the prayers. Not just hypothetically speaking, but what were some of the highlights of that experience for you? You sort of hinted at it a second ago about
positives.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is definitely challenging for sure. There are challenges, but we are accessible to. We have access to people more than before. If you are physically not able to come to Beth Yeshurun, or if you don't live in Houston, or you can come to all of our services and all of our programming via the internet, and that's really cool. High holidays. Are you gonna ask me about holidays later? Should I wait until you ask me?
We can jump from Passover to Rosh Hashanah. There's no law that says we can't that I'm aware of.
I don't think so. Because I would say that it was a big plus for us, is that we got to be accessible to more people in more ways than any other year. And are there drawbacks? 100%. 100% there are drawbacks. There are also upsides, which is people, I pre-recorded all of the pre-K services and the grade school services. We had the teen services were all pre-recorded. And if you have a kid, you don't have to worry about, oh, we have to make it to shul on time, or we're going to miss it because it's only half an hour. Not an issue. It's pre-recorded. You can play it whenever your kid is up from their nap and have their snack. And you can press pause. That's really helpful. And
yeah, I can see how for parents, that would be great. But as the rabbi, as the clergy member, though, and I'm not a rabbi, obviously, but as someone who does a lot of teaching and lecturing, we feed off of the reactions of the people in the room, right? We eye contact and laughter when you tell a joke, or things like that. And is that hard for you? Has that been difficult to kind of lose the face-to-face aspect of clergy work?
That's the worst part. That's the worst part. There are a lot of upsides with accessibility and like having more people be able to access our services, et cetera, et cetera. And the worst part is you can't see, you see this much. Like, am I happy? Am I unhappy? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It's just two eyes kind of blankly staring back at you. And that's from like, the 10 or 15 people in the room. And it's important that we do our services, since we're still doing indoor services, in barred sanctuary. It seats 900 when the partition is in. So the smallest you can make that space is seats 900. At its max, we have 40 people in there. And even with 40 people, even with 400 people, it feels empty. But when you look out, from our vantage point, I don't think it looks different for you. If you're sitting there, if you're watching, the bima looks like the bima. But for us to look out and see nobody, relatively speaking, nobody, and the people you see half their face and not the expressive part. So it's I think we're used to it at this point. It was more disheartening earlier on when it was new. I feel bad for the B'nai Mitzvah families because that's like their only experience of being up there is like that. And, at this point, we're so many months into it. We're like, oh, this is normal. For them, I feel bad because it's, they can't see all their friends and their family. And they just see the little eye in the sky. So I tell the kids, look at the eye in the sky, the camera. And like, go wave, that's where grandma is.
Yeah. No, she's watching. Is there a moment or two that stands out? I mean, you've done B'nai Mitzvahs, you've done probably funerals, I know today you said you officiated at a bris. I think you were also part of a conversion class that did their immersion in Galveston in the Gulf of Mexico as opposed to mikvah. I'm just sort of curious, are there moments that stand out that you'll remember in a year or 5 years or 10 years from this time?
Well, definitely the class. We had a conversion class, and it was a fairly large class. And in most every other time, they can, after they do their baked in, they have their I don't know how you say it, rabbinic tribunal. What a term! They would then go to the mikvah, the community mikvah, it's a community mikvah housed at UOS, and we didn't have that option. So we said everybody, half the class, because it was such a big class, let's all meet. We did half the time meet down in Galveston, and they did their conversion mikvah in the Gulf of Mexico. And I got so many calls and texts and Facebook messages from my colleagues around the country saying, oh my gosh, how did you do this? We have people who need to convert, people are getting married, babies are about to be born, and we need to do conversions. And so I could tell that really hit people. So it didn't seem weird at the time. I don't know, because everything's weird now. So few things really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. I told you, there's give and take. That's the upside. And then, you do a funeral and there's 10 people there. And not because there wouldn't be hundreds normally. I've done the funerals where someone says, hundreds of people would have come to my mother's funeral. She was so beloved in the community. And this feels like we're robbing her of this. And there's nothing that I can do to make that better.
Right.
So that's tough. And of course, watching so many congregants have coronavirus, be sick with coronavirus, be in the hospital and FaceTime them. And our company has died of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's another dimension of pastoral work that, I think a lot of people don't pay attention to if you're not a rabbi, right? Is how do you reach out to individuals who are sick, to their loved ones and their families. So, doing hospital visitations over Zoom.
Oh yeah. There's something vidui, the kind of confessional, so to speak, confessional prayer, the final rites, so to speak, of Jewish tradition. I've done vidui before. I've done it plenty of times, and you do it at the bedside of the person who's, they're at that stage where they're imminently going to pass. And to do that over the phone, like on speaker, it's very disconnecting.
Yeah.
And because you're not just saying words in a book, like I have my little book with all my stuff in it, and I'm not just saying words in a book when I'm there, when I'm being there in that moment with this person who's going through the life transition out, and to not be there with them, I don't know, you just kind of hope it does something, because you can't see anyone's face, you can't hear anything, you can't.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Yeah.
In terms of if it resonates.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess you try to remind yourself that you're doing the best you can, and you're helping people the only way that you know how. There's no rabbinic playbook for this, I assume like last semester of rabbinical school, they didn't
It's sort of like
to
grad
say,
school.
okay, guys, it's pandemic week. Here's what we would do.
Right. No, this is what you do when there's a natural. No, yeah. We had one class we had one session of a one semester long class about like talking to the media. It was minorly helpful when they've had to talk to the media.
Right.
Somewhat helpful if you're watching. Sorry, Deans.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're built for this, though. Like Judaism is built for this. This is what we are made for. We're, thank God for the easier times, but we're I think uniquely situated for times of strife and for life not looking the way you want it to, and having to, what better practice for having to restrict yourself and not being able to, do the things that you want to do the way you want to do them than Judaism, which teaches you to not eat the things you want, even if you really want to do them, or not do things on certain days and certain times, even if you really want to do them. Like, we're good at restricting ourselves. So like, oh, I have to wear a mask. Oh, I can't go this place. Oh, I can't be there. Okay, well, as a Jew, I've been practicing for this literally my whole life.
Interesting. Wow. Right. That, and I think also that, Judaism is very adaptable. I mean, I guess you could argue Judaism has been in survival mode for...
Yeah. This is what we're made for. We survive. This is what we do. We have literally... Oh, why do you think we're like one of the only ones still around? Thousands of years. Right. This is what we do. We adapt.
Yeah. Do you think you've done thousands of programs, lectures, story time for kids? There was something that you guys did for simchatura, which was really unique. Can you talk about that?
It's so funny. People are so excited about that. Yeah, we did. I didn't come up with the term. I'm very mad I did not, because it's very much so something I would do. We call them hakarfot. Be hakarfot instead of hakafot. Hakarfot. I did not come up with that. So mad. Instead of, usually Simchat is a big thing, and we have usually 3 different, Simchat Torah celebrations happening at Beth Yeshurun, and the big one, we've got all the kids come because we do like a sweet hakafa. So one of the, how do you say it in English? One of the times walking around with is candy, and so the kids get like huge bag, like they collect candy, all huge walk around and get up so much candy, they love it.
Halloween has nothing on
Simchat Torah.
Simchat Torah at Beth Yeshurun.
Nothing on Simchat Torah. It's true, and we could not do that this year, but it's Houston, so the weather, unless it's the middle of summer, is actually very nice. Like even today is like pretty nice, like 50 something. Like, you can do stuff outside, and so we did an outdoor Simchat Torah with people, and they kind of had their pre-assigned. They had a parking space, and that was like their family spot, and they could like bring their own food and do whatever, because you're in your own spot and you're outdoors. And we had a stage set up, and the cantor read Torah, and we did hakafot in an electric golf cart. All the rabbis took a turn. So I took a turn driving around doing a hakafah, bringing the Torah around, and I was driving, and I had, the Torah next to me, and I was like holding it because I was afraid one good bump would send it over.
Yeah, you'd be a little nervous about.
I was very nervous. I don't want to be the rabbi on whose drive, the Torah, and everyone has to fast. So didn't want that to be me, and I made it. And it was fun. It was really fun.
That's a good one. I'm curious if you think, will any of the innovations that you and your colleagues have had to make in response to COVID-19 last beyond this pandemic? I mean, today is December 2020. We're hearing in the news that perhaps a vaccine could be a few months away, maybe even a few weeks away. So you mentioned, that one of the advantages of this situation, as awful as it's been, is that people from all over Houston, all over the world, have been able to find Beth Yeshurun. Do you think that, synagogues will continue to offer programming on Zoom, will continue to, broadcast funerals and Shiva minions on Zoom, or are we all kind of zoomed out and that stuff will go away whenever this is over?
I think the answer, I can't speak for synagogues everywhere. I don't know. But I think the answer for us is obviously yes. It's both. I think, first of all, we are already streaming services. So for us, that's not like a huge leap to have to start streaming, because we were already streaming. So we didn't have to worry, we don't have, we had cameras, we had equipment, we were already built for that. We just had to, add more channels essentially. And so we're still going to stream our programs, and we're still going to stream our services. And I think a lot of our programs are still going to be streamed, the ones that, can be, I think that so many people have access to Beth Yeshurun. So many more people started looking for internet, like a virtual access to a synagogue, and found us, both, people here in Houston, people all over the country, all over the world, and I don't think we're going to cut off that access. And the people here who, maybe wouldn't normally come, but they can leave it up Saturday morning, have services while they're taking care of their kids and doing the morning routine. And we're not going to stop that, and they're not going to stop. I think, though, that people want and need to be around each other. Again, I think people are going to, when it's safe to do so, they're going to want to do it. And once it's safe to do so, we'll be more than happy to welcome them back as well. I mean, Judaism is such a communal religion. We don't practice it. You're not meant to practice Judaism solely, only, ever in your house, like on your little island. We're not built for this. We are a communal people, and it's unnatural for us to kind of not be communally based, either with other families in other homes or at the synagogue. And so I think it's going to be a continuation of the virtual and the innovation, and also I think we're going to go back to the things that we love as well. It'll be both. It'll be both.
Well, I for one can't wait. That sounds really good.
It sounds pretty exciting.
So we've checked hurricane off of our disaster bingo card, and now we've checked off pandemic. What's next?
Hopefully nothing.
Alien invasion.
At this point, you'd be not surprising.
You're just like, okay.
Couldn't be worse, right? I mean, every time you say that.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Well, this has been a really insightful conversation, Rabbi. Thank you so much for your time and for all the work and energy that you've poured into everything it is that you do for this community, during these past several months. I know that it's not easy. And you've given us.
Ariel says I'm a disaster rabbi. Not that I'm a disaster as a rabbi, but that my rabbinate has always been catastrophe. It's been Harvey or it's been coronavirus. So
sure.
I don't know. I feel blessed every day I get to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's Harvey or a pandemic or none of the above. Hopefully none of the above, more often than not.
Or maybe just like January,
Yeah, it's like a regular old January.
Yeah.
Or, just something pedestrian like that. Something boring. That'll be weird for me. I've never really had boring before.
Right. No.
But no, I love it. I love it. It's fine. It'll all Gamze Yavor.
Gamze Yavor, this too will pass. Rabbi Fort, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.